All right, welcome everybody. Going to give folks a few moments to join and then we'll get started with a quick intro. All right, looks like we've got a good amount of people jumping in. So thank you everyone so much for joining today for Bird-Friendly Glass Solutions. This is going to be presented by Danielle Tyson from Guardian Glass. Super excited to have this course for you guys today. Before we get started with the CEU approved version of today's webinar, we're going to do a quick little introduction, show you guys how to get in touch with today's course presenter on Acelab. So if you have any follow-up questions after today's event, that'll be a great place to go. Danielle, would you mind stopping your screen share for a moment so that I could share mine? Thank you. All right, awesome. So if you haven't been here before, my name is Bo. I'm from Acelab. We're helping out with hosting today's event. So I just want to show you guys really quick some of the stuff you can do on Acelab. It's a great place to come after today's webinar if you want to explore some more about Guardian's products and get in touch with their team directly. So we've got a bunch of free tools and resources. I'll launch a quick poll later in the webinar so that if you're interested in learning some more, you can sign up for a quick 15-minute free demo with our team. But today, just want to show you, if you know exactly the brand or the manufacturer that you're looking for, you can use this search bar at the top, type in the name of any manufacturer. It'll also cross-search categories of products, resources. So we've got a bunch of free resources on Acelab today. And you can go ahead and just head over to their page on Acelab. From here, you can get in touch with their team directly by clicking this contact button. You can also scroll down to view some more about their products, save these to your projects, explore case studies, and really learn some more about all of the great offerings that Guardian Glass has. So this is a great place to come after today's webinar. We'll share a link directly to this page in the chat so that it's super easy for you guys to get here. Another thing I want to quickly show you is that once you click this contact button, that'll go ahead and make a conversation with the Guardian Glass team. Your conversations live right up here in this header. I've got 104 of them just because I use this account for testing all the time. You'll probably have much less, but you can jump over here and view all of your conversations. You can nest conversations under specific products so that you can keep all of your communication organized and in one place. All right, and then other than that, just want to give folks a quick preview of what's to come. So we currently are releasing a beta program for some new features that we're building. This is another thing you can sign up for in that poll that I'm going to send out in a moment or so. So if you're interested in getting some early access to some of the newer tools that we're building, feel free to coordinate some time with our team and we'll get you all set up. This currently exists on Acelab already, but what I wanted to show you here today is the schedules tab. So this is essentially just an enhanced version of saving products to your projects. You can automatically load data from Acelab into this, and you can also add as much custom data as you want. So it's a really great place to store your digital product library. And we've got a whole team of architectural support people who are here to help you get this all set up, get your firm up and running with Acelab. So if you're interested in learning some more, I'll share this poll momentarily and you can sign up for that. Other than that, just want to encourage folks to please use the Q&A throughout today's presentation to submit any questions or comments. We should have some time to get to some of those live at the end of today's webinar, but if we don't get to your question live, we'll have a record of it so we can follow up with you after today's event. And today's course was AIA approved. We did ask for AIA numbers upon registration. I will also send over a form in the chat momentarily. So if you're worried you didn't submit your AIA number or you need to request a certificate, you can do that through the form that I'll send. All right, that takes care of everything for me. So just want to thank everyone again so much for joining today. And thank you, Danielle, for presenting today's course. Feel free to share your screen and take it away whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Bo, and thank you all for joining today. I'm really excited to give this presentation. I always am. I feel like bird-friendly glass can be really challenging, and I cover New York City for Guardian. So with new legislation in New York City, this has been what I talk about all day, every day with architects, and there certainly are a lot of complications, and really it comes into harmonizing all of the requirements, code requirements or aesthetic requirements, having it all harmonized in the building and making it all work, which can be challenging in the space of bird-friendly glass. So to give you some background, I'm an architectural consultant, an architectural design manager is what they call me. There are a bunch of us all throughout the world, actually, but here in North America, we all work collaboratively and try to help on projects. And our only job, we don't sell glass directly, is just to support. And in this space specifically, I'm not aware of anyone who's made the types of resource investments that Guardian have in terms of experts related to birds and keeping birds safe. And so it's a really good place to come if you have questions in general that we can help with, even unrelated to products or specific things like that. So let's get started. Like Bo said, this is an AIA CEU course, and we'll proceed that way with, and Bo said she would help, get you all, make sure that you're getting all the credits that you need. So this is a jumping off point, a starting point. That's what the purpose of this presentation is. It's at a high level. And what I'm looking to accomplish here is to give you a baseline of information that you can start with as you're looking for bird-friendly glass solutions for a project that you're working on. So we're going to look at behavioral patterns of birds, why birds collide with glass, look at the ways that different glass products are tested, and then look at some products that are, available currently or are coming online soon. So what do we know about birds and why do we care about it? So, I mean, in New York City, I heard a lot, especially in the beginning of when the legislation first started, there's only pigeons in New York. And there are a lot of pigeons in New York, but even in dense urban environments like New York City, like larger cities, there are over 200 resident species of birds, not just pigeons. And while those birds are threatened with glass collisions, the real focus is on the birds who are migrating. They're not used to or familiar with the environment of a big city, and they're just passing through. And that can be particularly challenging. 4,000 species of birds are migratory. That makes up just under half of the total bird population in the world. It's good to remember they're frequent long distance flyers. Some are flying over 6,000 miles, some are flying 80 hours straight. And the United States, as you could see in this image here, the United States acts as this 8-lane highway that birds use to get to and from their winter homes. So let's talk about why birds matter to us from a few different perspectives. They provide hundreds of billions of dollars in ecosystem services in North America. There's, they play prominent roles in religion or art. There's some cultural significance with birds. And some of the things that they do are they cycle nutrients. They contribute to soil formation. So, for example, in areas, unfortunately, with large wildfires, the birds can come in and help to disperse seeds to bring new vegetation to the areas where that vegetation was decimated. They help to pollinate plants and disperse seeds and really help in that way. But they're also good with pest and bug control. So migrating birds are insectivores. And it's been sort of a tug of war to get, owners and everyone on board with bird-friendly glass. And maybe they don't care so much about birds, but maybe some of you or some of them care about your morning cup of coffee. The bird that you see here, this warbler, frequently travels to Costa Rica during the winter time, and they eat the beetles that attack the coffee crops, and that helps those farmers improve the crop quality and the yield, reduce their pesticide use, and overall make a better product. So birds like the warbler are common collision victims, and they're helping also to improve your cup of coffee in the morning. Birds are relevant in architecture that we interact with every single day. And like it says on this slide here, sometimes birds that we see out of our window when we're working too much or in our homes too much, especially over the last several years, their only connection to sort of the outside world and to nature. So glass is important in terms of building. Bigger glass, better, especially in large cities, to help experience a view, but also allow for that connectivity from indoors to outdoors. Natural light coming through the windows helps with energy and focus and productivity. Sometimes birds are the only wildlife in big cities. And again, that connection between natural and our environment. The bird that you see here, the peregrine falcon, is a very frequent city dweller. Their preferred natural environment are cliffs, and so big cities like New York mimic that environment for them. And there are actually nests on all the rivers. All the bridges from Albany to New York City. So they have nests over there, and they really prefer being in a city environment, if not their natural environment. This slide says that up to 1 billion birds die each year from window collisions. And they've recently increased that number to about 2 billion, just under 2 billion. But this slide, when it was referencing 1 billion birds die each year from window collisions, that was specific to the United States, not North America, not global. 1 billion birds in the United States die from window collisions. So the decline in population is concerning, right? Take a group of 200 baby birds being born, right? 80 of them are going to be killed by human-caused threats. And that's habitat loss, insecticides, power lines. And the number one killer, actually, of birds is outdoor, but domestic pet cats. So if we have 80 of those 200 baby birds killed from human-caused threats, that leaves the remaining 120. They have to battle natural selection, right? So we have to do our part to help conserve the bird population and keep them safe. And with the growing recognition of this problem, there's growing legislation. In North America, Toronto was the first city to enact legislation. The birds were flying over Lake Ontario into the city of Toronto and colliding with the glass on the buildings. Cook County in Illinois was the first area of the United States to have bird-friendly legislation, and now we're seeing that really grow. New York City established in 2021, January of 2021, the most aggressive bird-friendly legislation in North America. There's some federal bills pending, for all federal buildings, including retrofits, to incorporate bird-friendly glass. But it's not just legislation. Audubon societies and animal advocacy groups understand buildings are going to be built, right? But they might make recommendations or lobby for a project to be canceled or adjusted to incorporate bird-friendly glass. There have been several high-profile projects where it was challenging, and there was a tug of war between the Audubon societies and the building owners. So it's better to get ahead of this problem. If Audubon societies are recommending using bird-friendly glass, it's better to take care of it early on than to have to deal with it later by making adjustments to a brand new building. So let's talk about why the birds hit the glass. And there are 4 main reasons why they do. And it could be the reflection seen off of the glass, or the transmission of the glass, seeing through it. So for those 2, I want you to remember image formation, images reflected off of the glass or seen through the glass. And then there's design, the shape of the building, orientation, and then lighting. So let's go a little deeper on those. I think this slide does a good job of explaining without words why reflection can be challenging. Like I said earlier, the birds can be flying 6,000 miles or up to 80 hours straight. And so at certain points, they look for a place to rest, to eat, and then to move on with their journey, wherever it is that they're going. So in this image of this building, you can see that the bird may mistake the image of the tree, the image formed on the tree, of the tree on the building, as a place to rest and collide with the building, or while they're on their journey, mistaking the image of the sky for the actual sky. So for a long time, and there have been some slight changes to this, but for a long time, high reflectivity facing outdoors on the glass and bird friendly were not synonymous. And there have been some adjustments to that, but for the most part, high reflectivity or outdoor reflectivity over 15% is really a no-no with bird friendly glass. The other challenge, like I mentioned, is high transmission, being able to see really clearly through that glass. And so birds don't perceive the edges or the borders or the window frames as an indication that glass is solid. So it looks like a space that they can just fly through. They have a good concept and an understanding of their size and their energy and when they need to conserve that energy. And so they try to take shortcuts when possible. So a situation or an example of a particular challenge, like a glass bus stop, would be really problematic if they're trying to take some shortcut through. So this is an issue for the birds during the daytime and the nighttime. And what I've seen, which is a positive, a growth of vegetation either on the interior of buildings or incorporated into the facade, which is really great, but it's an attractive environment for the birds to be drawn into. And so here on this building, you see a lot of vegetation right outside of the glass, which could draw birds in. Again, they're not perceiving the edges or the framing as a space they can't fly through, and they can often collide with the glass. Even if the bird is able to get inside of this building, they're going to have the same problem trying to get out. So it's good to remember how they see the world, and the cues that we have that tell us not to walk through something, the birds don't have that. Moving on, the shape of the building, the location, the building orientation, and landscaping can all impact collision risk. So an example of this would be a courtyard scenario. In a courtyard, it's good to remember that a bird can land like a helicopter straight down, but needs to take off and fly off on an angle. So a courtyard can be a particularly challenging situation for them. One of the first projects that I worked on that bird-friendly glass was being requested was a U-shaped building. And on the 8th or 9th floor, inside of the U-shape was a huge patio with a pool, and they were planning on putting trees and flowers and other vegetation up there. And so you can imagine that for the birds, they're entering that space. There's 3 walls of glass facade surrounding them and a glass railing. And so they can become disoriented, lacking the understanding of what is reflection of the environment or what is the actual environment. And so it's good to be cognizant of design when designing a bird-friendly building, and to avoid some of those scenarios. And finally, lighting. Many birds are migrating at nighttime. Not all of them, but some of them do. And the lighting, as we know, on the inside of a building is often necessary or always necessary. And sometimes it's used for design or safety on the exterior. But lighting can be a challenge. Exterior lighting can confuse birds, and interior lighting attracts birds and can cause collisions. Around North America, there are plenty of lights out programs, which are great in terms of bird friendly, that if a building is not in use in the evening hours or the nighttime hours, to shut off the lights on the inside of the building, and that can really help prevent a lot of nighttime collisions. The birds that are migrating are using the night sky and ambient light levels to aid in their migration navigation. So lighting, especially uplighting like you see here on the outside of the building, can lure them in and trap them into a haze where they can die of exhaustion. And my team here don't like when I use this example, but I feel that while it's really a dramatic example, it's a good one because everyone knows it. The memorial lights that are lit in New York City for the Twin Towers, they're lit every 9/11, and we're talking about, a lot of light bulb wattage going miles into the sky. So it's really a dramatic example. The first year that they lit those memorial lights, they started to see birds flying all around the lights for a long time. And ultimately, some of them started to drop out of the sky in exhaustion. They would collide with a building or land on the ground and unfortunately be hurt or die. So those lights were luring them in, they were circling the lights, and like I said, dropping out of the sky with exhaustion. So after that first year, there are volunteers from Audubon societies or bird advocacy groups that will watch the lights, look for a collection of about 1,000 birds, and when they see that, the lights are shut down for a few moments, allowing the birds to safely disperse, and then they're turned back on. So that's, again, an extreme example of challenges with lighting, but I think it gives you a good idea of what could happen. So just another thing to be cognizant of as you're designing. So with an understanding of the causes of bird collisions, those 4 major causes, let's look at some of the ways that glass products can be tested to determine whether they're good as bird-friendly glass and bird deterrents, keeping them away from the building. So it's good to remember with this testing, because I always receive a lot of questions about testing and how it's done and how it can be accurate. The testing is for the product, not for building code compliance in most cases, though New York rely on testing for their code. There are several different testing methods, though we'll focus on the one major one, and the results take time. The testing can't be perfect. We're talking about wild animals, and it's all bird-friendly legislation, including and the testing as well, is designed to mitigate this issue. They're not doing it with the expectation of solving the problem. Even with a bird-friendly glass building and a product that's been testing, it's hard to take all factors of a building into consideration: the orientation of the building, the lighting conditions, et cetera, et cetera. So we're doing it the best that we can to build bird safe, not expecting it to be perfect. The test that I want to focus on the most is the American Bird Conservancy tunnel test, since it guides a lot of legislation, and the American Bird Conservancy are often consulted with on specific projects with architects or facade consultants and with cities as they establish that legislation. This is the test as you see it here. It's the tunnel test. And you know what, I'll move on to the next slide so I could show you. When a glass manufacturer is testing a product, they send it to the American Bird Conservancy, and they put it at the end of a dark tunnel, side by side with a control sample, which is a piece of uncoated glass or an insulated unit that has nothing on it. And so they can only conduct this test during spring and fall, because that's when the birds are migrating. And they collect about 100 birds, they catalog them, check them for injuries, make sure they're not super stressed out, though I imagine this is stressful for them. And they put the birds into the tunnel. And when they get to that pivot point, around 2/3 of the way in, as a manufacturer, you want the birds to fly toward that control sample, that they're seeing some sort of visible deterrent, and they're going to try to avoid that piece of glass. Now, there is a net here, if you see toward the end, that prevents the birds from being injured during the testing, but you want the birds to fly toward that control sample. They run this test 80 times per sample. Could be 2 today, 10 tomorrow, 30 next week. So they run it many, many times to get as accurate a result as they can. And of those 100 birds that are put through the tunnel, the American Bird Conservancy says that if 30 or less of those birds would have hit the test glass, that is considered bird-friendly glass. And that number of 30 is the material threat factor or TF, as it may be in a specification or any guidance that you might find. Some cities, like New York specifically, decided to do better and require any product being installed in the city be at a 25 threat factor or less, meaning that 25 or less of the birds would have hit that test glass. This test is only in transmission, what the birds are seeing through the glass, and it can't test in reflection, which is challenging because there's a lot of inherent reflection with glass. But the American Bird Conservancy test is the most popular test in North America. There are 2 other well-known tests: the Austrian tunnel test, which is conducted in Europe, which is very similar to the American Bird Conservancy tunnel test, but it's able to be tilted to test the glass in both reflection and transmission. And then there is also the Muhlenberg College field test, where, as you can see here, the pieces of glass are hung in a field, and the birds see them or they don't, and often collide with the glass. This test is good, but it does and has the potential to cause injury to the birds. It's also very hard to keep track of the birds and their activity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So again, we really focus on the ABC tunnel test, but those are the 3 most popular globally. And finally, there's also the option of retrofit monitoring, where we see this conducted most often at colleges, universities, where monitors and volunteers go out and monitor the building, count birds with collisions if they, unfortunately they'd be dead, for them to count them and have an understanding of that. After a retrofit is conducted, they're again monitoring to see the impact of the bird-friendly glass in that scenario. So we'll start into the solution space. We've looked at, basic bird behavior, some collision causes, and the most common methods of testing. So let's get into how we solve this problem. And in order to do that, we have to understand the bird physiology. Like I said, the birds are very aware of their body size and their energy resources. They're also very agile. They can turn and twist and accommodate their bodies as they fly through smaller openings or crevices. They fly at high speeds. They can take off quickly from the ground or speed up during flight mode, and they're constantly interacting with the world around them. So it's also important to understand how bird vision, in this case songbird vision, differs greatly from human vision. So we can see that humans have a wide range of binocular vision, which enhances our depth perception. That is very, very narrow in songbird vision. They have a wider range of monocular vision, much greater than ours. And they have a very narrow blind spot. They're constantly, when they're flying, they're looking around the world for food, for a place to rest, and very often for predators. So not only do they have this poor depth perception, but they're also distracted, right? So if you had a friend who had vision like a songbird, what accommodations would you have to make to help them avoid walking into glass? And even with our enhanced vision in this space, people walk into glass all the time. We certainly see it online, a lot of videos of that all the time. So think about what you might have to do to help your friend if they had vision like a songbird. The other very interesting thing about many migrating birds is their ability to see in the lower part of the UV spectrum in spaces that human vision doesn't go to, doesn't extend to. This was explained to me, I feel like the best way to understand how they're seeing the world was humans are seeing a mix of the 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, and that colors the world around us. Birds have a 4th color that enhances, adds vibrancy to the world that they're seeing. That's the enhancement they get from being able to see in the lower part of the UV spectrum. And this is also why there is a growth in UV technology being incorporated into bird-friendly glass, because it's in many cases visible to the birds and significantly less visible to humans. So really that harmony of making it work for everybody and everything. When we're talking about visible cues on the glass, so dots or stripes, the general rule of thumb had been the 2x4 rule, that the spacing of that visible deterrent should be 2 inches wide, 2 inches in height by 4 inches wide. So that was the practice for some time. But the concern was raised for the smallest migrating bird, which is a hummingbird. So because they're so small, now the best practice is a 2 inch by 2 inch spacing of the visible deterrent on the glass. And there are plenty of products available and tested in both 2x2 or 2x4 spacing. Just a good rule of thumb. I know that some manufacturers will allow for more customization in terms of patterns, but if you're starting to design something on your own and you want to make sure that it's bird friendly prior to getting it tested, using the 2x2 rule will be really helpful in just making sure that it is a bird friendly product. So glass is an important part of building design, like I mentioned before, allowing for natural light and increasing our focus and productivity and mood overall. So bird-friendly glass doesn't ask that we reduce the glass on the buildings, but it asked us that we be responsible in our design and from a manufacturer standpoint in producing products that are effective for bird friendly. The number one thing that I need to stress that of what makes a product effective as a bird friendly deterrent is establishing contrast. So that doesn't mean that you need more coverage, more visible deterrent on the glass. So higher percentage of coverage does not equal better performance, and I'll illustrate that here. When you look at these two samples in the photo, the sample on the right has very small deterrent size with very minimal spacing. And so if you were to see that glass with even human vision on an angle, it may look as a reflective solid, right? You can't really discern that there is a marker on that glass versus the sample on the left, which has established adequate contrast. There's sufficient spacing and sufficient deterrent size. So contrast is key. And I think there's a lot of confusion on this because we're looking at two samples with ceramic frit, which is a well-known proven technology used for design or solar heat gain benefit or glare control for a long time outside of bird friendly. And we always spoke about frit as a coverage percentage. So we kind of need to eliminate that thought process when we're talking about bird friendly glass. More coverage is not better. It's all about contrast. On this slide, let's look at from left to right, the first three patterns. All three have 50% coverage. Pattern number one is going to be highly ineffective. We're covering half the glass and allowing for the other half to be completely exposed, and birds can try to or attempt to fly through that area. Let's jump over to pattern number three. Still 50% coverage, but really small deterrent size and minimal spacing. Again, allowing for that, it could potentially be viewed as a solid when looking at it on an angle, and it's not creating enough contrast versus pattern two, also 50%, but they've established that high visual contrast. It's very clear that the stripes are there because they're adequate size with adequate spacing. But 50% coverage is really significant and typically undesirable. So this slide is to show you that pattern number four is only 7.5% coverage and is as effective as pattern number two. So going from 50% all the way down to 7.5. That said, there are a ton of products that have been tested by many manufacturers at 1% coverage or 0.5% coverage that are really effective because they have the adequate contrast established. So moving on in the solution space, we're getting there. I love this slide. I think it really helps illustrate one point, which is, and I get asked this all the time, where should the bird-friendly deterrent be when we're talking about an insulated unit going up in a building? Let's imagine that the glass that you're seeing here is a standard 1-inch insulated glass unit. The surface number is placed on that surface. So number one is on the first surface of glass facing the exterior. Number two is on the opposite side of that piece of glass. Number three and number four moving back, okay? When you're looking at samples at your desk or in your conference room and you're reviewing them with a bird-friendly deterrent on them, you're gonna easily be able to see the pattern no matter what surface it's on, whether it's on 1 or 4, easy to see. Moving to the right, when a light source is introduced, like the sun, when the glass is installed on the building, number one is still super visible, mostly seeing number two as well. But surfaces 3 and 4, now we're no longer able to see the markered numbers on surface 3 and 4. What this is saying, and the American Bird Conservancy say the same, is that the most effective place for a bird-friendly deterrent is on the first surface of glass facing the exterior. It allows for the birds to have the best chance of seeing that product, and the majority of products that are approved and on ABC's database of viable products, they are most often on surface 1. Now getting more specific on solutions, and I mentioned ABC's database. It's on their website. You could filter through in many different ways, depending on what type of product you're looking for, what manufacturer you're looking for. And they have a full list of every product that they've ever tested and how it scored, what its threat factor was. Here in this image, we're seeing someone who actually works on our bird friendly team using window markers to put the stripes on the window, really more of a residential fix. And there are films and stickers. There are more emerging, because we used to say on this slide, hey, the films and stickers are more for residential use or not for really commercial buildings. But there are some really great films and stickers that are becoming available and have been tested that you can use if your owner or you don't want to have a more permanent solution that's part of the glass. You can find all of that on ABC's website, including insect screens, just regular screens that go on typically residential windows to keep bugs out. They are bird friendly. They're on ABC's website and they score a 1. So we need to be 30 or lower. A 1 is really good. So there are plenty of aftermarket fixes. But when we're talking about more permanent solutions, long-term solutions for bird-friendly glass, I mentioned ceramic frit before. This is our baseline, most visible, but typically least expensive solution for bird-friendly glass is a ceramic paint permanently fired onto the glass in a specific pattern. You know, this slide says it's applied to surface 1, 2, or 3. And while I'm sure you could get it on 1 or 3, it's most commonly placed on the second surface of glass. That's where it's most widely available. And if we're talking about specifications, it's going to be easiest to be able to find the most manufacturers willing to offer ceramic frit on surface 2. Because it's fully opaque, it allows for better visibility and is acceptable on surface 2. So ceramic frit, typically least expensive and most visible. The sort of happy medium or middle range option is etching on the glass, whether it's laser or acid etching. I think most people are familiar with generally acid etched glass. For bird friendly, we again have it in a specific pattern. It's tested by the American Bird Conservancy, and you will only ever find etched glass on surface 1 or approved on surface 1, should be facing outside. The reason I call it the happy medium option is because it's translucent versus fully opaque. It allows for all of the light to still come through, but it's diffused, right? So it tends to blend a little bit better on the exterior of the facade, less visible, but it's giving the birds 2 signals. One, it's a visible deterrent on the glass, but it's also breaking up the inherent reflectivity of glass. Even if the Low-E coating itself is low reflectivity, glass is inherently reflective. So with no Low-E coating, glass reflects 15%. So acid etched deterrents really help to break that up. 2 signals to the birds. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, UV technology being incorporated into glass solutions for bird friendly because those birds are able to see in the lower part of the UV spectrum. Here we have it shown in a striped pattern, and the pink or purple stripes that you're seeing are what the birds who are able to see in that part of the UV spectrum, what they are seeing. With UV coated glass, if it's a true UV product, using only UV to make it effective, it will always require laminated glass. Doesn't always have to be like the composition you see on this slide, but it'll always include laminated glass. And probably the most common question I get is why? Why does it need it? UV coatings are reflecting ultraviolet light. And so when we're looking at this slide, in between the pink stripes, there's nothing. PVB or SGP interlayers absorb ultraviolet light. They block ultraviolet light. So by having the pattern reflecting the light and the interlayer absorbing the light, it is creating the contrast that I mentioned earlier. So it's allowing for it to work. It's allowing for it to be a bold and bright pattern that the birds can see. By using UV coatings that incorporate laminated glass, it enables the UV to be less, or the coating itself to be less visible to humans. For UV products that don't incorporate laminated glass, you will notice that they are significantly more visible than those who use it. So there's a trade-off here. We need the pattern to work and be less visible to humans. We have to have laminated glass. If we're okay with seeing it more similar to an etch or a ceramic frit, we can eliminate the laminated glass. So when you're looking at selecting between these products, whether it's more temporary solutions like stickers or films, and one of the things I should note with films, I get asked about films a lot, even though we don't make them. There are, like I said, really good ones, especially some newer ones that look very good. It's always important to check with the IGU manufacturer and make sure that a film or sticker does not void your IGU warranty. In most cases, they do because they draw in excess heat and can cause some stress to the glass and cause breakage. But I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it, just check with your IGU manufacturer, check with the film manufacturer, and see if there's some sort of compensatory warranty that you can get from the film manufacturer. Just check on those things. So like I started this presentation by saying, it can be challenging to harmonize codes, performance, cost, aesthetics. It's really good to work with glass manufacturers, any of them, to make sure that you can harmonize all of those key factors. Cost is one of the things, again, I get a lot of frequent questions. Cost is among them. There are tips and tricks that we can offer to help that when you're in early design, you're designing a window and the size of the window that works really well with patterned glass, reduces the waste of the glass, and really helps to control cost. There's a variety of options related to aesthetics. Do you want to see it more? Do you want to see it less? What are the priorities in terms of aesthetics? How do we harmonize the energy performance, incorporate bird-friendly glass, work with acoustic performance? In many cases, or in all cases, when I'm starting to work on a project with an architect, I say, okay, give me the requirements outside of bird friendly. Let's build an insulated glass unit as we would without bird friendly glass. And once I've determined, okay, well, there's high acoustic performance required on this project, which would require laminated glass. That helps with everything else, especially cost. Laminated glass is required in this project for acoustics. Laminated glass is required with UV products. That could be a really good option here. So I can't stress enough how important it is to touch base with whichever manufacturer you've chosen early and often. This is a very rapidly evolving space, more than any other product in the glass industry that I have seen. And so as more codes are being established, more manufacturers are developing new products and new technologies. Given the standard life cycle of a project, 18 months, 2 years, sometimes more, the product that you picked in early design, it may still be available, of course, but there may be something else that came available since then. So check in with your manufacturer early, often. It really helps to avoid issues. It may help reduce costs because the newer technologies allow it to be sold at a lower cost or a more effective cost. So look to the manufacturers as your best resource. We've really had to do some, digging in this space to find out what works the best and offer those products to the market. So that's that. I know I just did a ton of talking. I'd love to answer some questions if there are any and if time allows for it.
Right, awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle. That was really great and informative. It does look like we've got some questions coming up. And just a reminder for folks to please submit questions to the Q&A now, and we can get to some of those live while we've got some time here. All right, from someone, I have a current residential project, which is in bird sensitive area. Are there any specific window products that perform better for this requirement?
I'm going to assume that by residential, we mean like a single family home versus a multifamily residential building. For, one of the things that does not work, and they are sold for single family homes, are these hawk stickers. They're these black stickers in the shape of a hawk. If you put them on your windows, do not work. The birds will see it and try to fly more quickly around it to get away from it and ultimately collide with the glass. For residential, I would stick to the 2x4 or 2x2 spacing rules. And whether, I think if we're talking about cost as well, a sticker may be a really good option here, and they have some residential. I think some manufacturers would be Bird Divert, and there's another one. I can always share that or share the link to ABC's website for those products. That would be really helpful. I have birds hit my windows. It's really jarring. I think a sticker would be a really good solution unless you're replacing all of the glass in the home. Wait,
Right.
I'm sorry, was that for new construction? Was that indicated there?
That wasn't indicated, but for whoever asked that question, if you want to, yeah, give a little bit more clarification on new construction. Oh, they just said it's a remodel.
It's a remodel, so full glass replacement. In that case, any of the products that we mentioned would be good also. You can use a UV product if you don't want to see it as much, especially for if you want an unobstructed view from the interior to the exterior, UV would be best option. It's also, because of the laminated component, going to give great acoustics to the home. And acid etch could be a really good option as well. Lower visibility, but still really effective.
Awesome. All right. From Ivy, great presentation. I've seen laminated interlayers with visible bird-friendly dots. Is it possible to include UV visible markings in the PVB interlayer?
So I think I am familiar with that product. I think it's the PVB manufacturer Eastman that produced that. It's the dots, the silver or reflective dots on the interlayer. There are manufacturers who use UV on the interlayer, but and ABC's website and their reps will sort of back this up. The less visible the product is, the more important it is to be on the outside surface. So it is less likely to be effective if it's a less visible product, if it's on the interlayer versus on surface one. The more visible the product is, the more acceptable it is to sort of move it back in the IGU.
Mhm. All right, great. I'm seeing this required in a variety of cities now in mid-high-rise new construction applications. Do you expect to see this being enforced at the federal or international level in the years to come?
Yes, I mean, US Glass Magazine, I think last month had a big article about bird friendly, and they had a map on there that, and I think it's even been upgraded since then, but it was from June of last year, showing all of the areas around the US where bird friendly legislation has been enacted. I've seen it grow tremendously over the last 2 years. Portland, Maine has been recent. Washington, D.C. is starting up soon. There is that federal bill pending for all federal buildings to incorporate bird-friendly glass, whether retrofit or new construction. It is growing very rapidly, even in areas where I never thought we'd be getting requests. I think architects are becoming more aware of it. Designers, even building owners saying, I as a voluntary measure want to incorporate it. I think it'll only grow. And interestingly, or I find this interesting, we typically see Europe being ahead with these types of initiatives. And in this particular space, North America is way further along with bird-friendly glass. There's not as much available overseas, and there isn't as much legislation. But to really answer your question, I expect there to be in coming years for sure.
All right, great. And one that came in earlier is somebody had asked if the presentation is going to be shared so that they could share it with some other folks in the office. So I did share a link to where we post webinar recordings on Acelab. We post all of our recordings to that link. I'm going to share it in the chat momentarily as well so that everyone can access that. Usually the recording will be up a day or so after the end of the webinar. And just note that CEUs are not provided for watching the recording. So if you're interested in helping folks at your firm get some CEUs, feel free to use the poll that's up now. We'll get you in touch with the team at Guardian Glass so you can coordinate something. All right. One more. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say, feel free to reach out to any of us on the team with questions as well. Bo showed you how to get in touch with us. We have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge and a lot of resources with this. And like I said, I wasn't exaggerating. It has been a real learning curve for the architects and designers that I work with, as well as the manufacturers, all of us, pivoting to bird-friendly glass. So don't hesitate. I think reaching out to manufacturers is really the easiest way to get the most information. So don't hesitate to call us.
Yeah, definitely. And while we're still here, I threw a bunch of links in the chat so you can get in touch with their team. You can view the recording. So be sure to grab some of those before you head out today in case you need them for later. All right. So someone asks, is Guardian Glass part of any window manufacturers, or do you have your own line of windows?
We do not have our own line of windows. So I assume that means the framing system. We have a lot of window manufacturers that we work with around North America and around the world. So every window company has the option to buy Guardian Glass. You just have to specify it or request it. So really, there's not too many limitations.
Mm-hmm.
I should note, though, for Guardian specific, our products are produced in the United States or in North America overall. So, and because of what I noted before about Europe being somewhat behind North America, the majority of manufacturers' products are produced more locally. So if you end up specifying a European window manufacturer, there have been some challenges in exporting glass from the US overseas to bring the windows back. So it would be best if it's a bird-friendly project to specify a domestic window manufacturer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right, we've got one more coming in, and I also want to quickly mention if anybody has a long-winded question or they just want to ask their question out loud, feel free to raise your hand. I'll keep my eye on that, and we can unmute you. You don't have to turn your video on, so I promise it's not scary. But in case anybody has, a question that feels tricky to type out, feel free to do that, and we'll unmute you so you can ask out loud. All right, from Bryce, what kind of spacer system is used in Guardian's IGUs with UV bird glass?
So Guardian do not fabricate the insulated glass units. Some manufacturers do make their own units. Some of us do not. So we work with fabricator partners around the world again. And what I like about the way of going to market like that is more localized production, reducing some energy inefficiencies on that way, and competitive bidding for the projects. The fabricators can bid on the projects and hopefully bring down that cost. To answer your question directly, that means that you can have whatever spacer you want to specify with Guardian's UV glass. There's no restriction on the spacer used with that glass or any of the bird-friendly products. And one question I get a lot with UV specifically is, can you use any type of interlayer to make the product function? Every standard interlayer, SGP, PVB, is compatible, right? The only type that you wouldn't want to use would be super specialty, more difficult to find, but any product that does not block ultraviolet light. If it's specialty to allow light in, to allow the UV light in, then that would not work with our UV bird-friendly product or any UV bird-friendly product. Why would you even want a specialty interlayer like that? We had a project that was a school. They put the windows in, they used laminated glass. The science teacher started to complain that the plants weren't growing, their plant experiments, because PVB blocks ultraviolet light. So in that case, you would have wanted it. So standard interlayers work with UV, and there's no restrictions on spacers.
All right, awesome. Okay, looks like that person had a follow-up question about where those IGUs are made, but I think we answered that in the first response. So you can specify any IGU that you would like. All right, from Ivy, when ordering glass with both low E coating and frit on the #2 surface, what is the impact to lead time?
Only some manufacturers offer the low E and the ceramic frit on the same surface. So not everybody does that. So you'd be going to one one or two specific fabricators to do that. Alternatively, you can move the low E coating to surface 3 and keep the frit on surface 2. So there's a bunch of different options for that. It shouldn't impact the lead time, so far as I'm aware, to have them on the same surface. And yeah, lead time isn't typically an issue for bird friendly. I think it's the same sort of thing. If you're specifying very heavy glass, or tinted glass or low iron glass that is of, you know, greater thickness, it's good to always allow enough lead time for that. But frit of any type shouldn't really impact your lead time.
Awesome. Good to know. All right, great. It looks like that might have wrapped up our questions. So I'll give everyone another moment or so in case you have any questions that come up. Feel free to submit them now. We can get to them live. Also, just a reminder, grab those links out of the chat that you might need. We're also going to have a quick post-event survey that'll pop up on your browser as you leave today. So if you have any questions that come to you as you're heading out, feel free to submit them there. And you can also provide some feedback on how the course was. That's super helpful for us to keep bringing you content that's relevant to you. So appreciate anyone who can take a moment to fill that out for us.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
I was looking around on my desk to see if I had a sample. One of the best pieces of advice that I can give you if you're working with bird friendly glass, it's really hard to see here. This is what we had to learn the hard way very early on. Keep this in mind and it'll save a lot of headaches. The camera's not gonna, but anyway, look at whichever manufacturer that you're looking at. If there's a pattern on the glass, two things that are significantly impact cost is if the pattern is linear and directional, okay, meaning that you have the piece of glass and there are stripes or dots in a linear fashion. It would drive me crazy if that were on my house and those lines were not lined up. This is adding to a lot of labor in fabrication. Not to mention, if your IGU size that you've specified or that's in your drawings only uses you know, part of the glass, right? Then we have the remaining part on a, you know, that they would maybe throw out or use for another IGU. With linear directional patterns, they can't be turned sideways and be used, right? So that increases the waste factor. Now they're throwing out that additional piece of glass. When possible, use random patterns or patterns that it's not as important or the eye doesn't catch them having to be lined up. You will always see a very dramatic swing in price because of that, the fabricated price. The other thing is, whichever manufacturer you're using, look at their data page, figure out what the sheet size the product comes available on, and put the window size in your drawings according to that. Use the most, if this is 100 inches by 200 inches, you want to have, you know, 50 by 100, whatever it is that will allow for you to use more of the glass on that sheet and reduce the waste. When I say significant swing in price, I mean $10, $20 per square foot because of a waste factor. Again, we learned this the hard way. Guardian and most manufacturers weren't making pattern glass for facades. We didn't know how that would translate in fabrication and install. So, you know, yield optimization, less waste. And if you have any questions on that, I'm sure whichever manufacturer, if it's not Guardian, can help, but I'd be happy to work that out with you on projects. Huge impact.
Awesome. Great. Well, it looks like we are right about at time. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or was that cover it?
That was it. That was the one thing I really want to highlight. It makes such a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, appreciate you bringing that up. All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much to everyone who attended today. We appreciate you coming out and participating with us. And thank you, Danielle, for a really awesome presentation. I really learned a lot, so that was really great. And yeah, looking forward to connecting with you guys further after today's webinar. All right.
Thank you.
A good one. Bye.
Bye-bye.